Welcome to the Voices for Voices podcast, sponsored by Redwood Living. Thank you for joining us today. I am Justin Allen Hayes, founder and executive director of Voices for Voices, host and humanitarian. You can learn more about Voices for Voices on our Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and our website, voicesforvoices.org. Voices for Voices is a 501c3 nonprofit charity organization that survives solely on donations. So if you're able to, please consider heading over to voicesforvoices.org to help us continue our mission and the goal and dream to help 3 billion people over the course of my lifetime and beyond. Or you can also send a donation to the mailing address of Voices for Voices at 2388 Beckett Circle, that's in Stow, Ohio, 44224. Are you looking for a volunteer opportunity? Great. You can reach out to us today via email at president@voicesforvoices.org. I founded Voices for Voices to provide a platform for folks to share their stories with others as we work to break the stigma around mental health, accessibility, and disabilities, helping people get the help they need, while also helping them prepare or transition into the workforce with the Voices for Voices Career Center, where we connect talent with opportunity for job seekers and employers from coast to coast and in every industry and job level. At last count, we had north of 10,000 jobs that we have posted in our Career Center. So you might want to check that out. Okay, in today's episode, I'm going to be joined by Adrian Burns. Adrian is 27 years old and lives in Cincinnati, Ohio. She has been free from any substance for a full year. She has 2 boys and works into mental health, substance use disorder field space. She helps people get connected to treatment. So today we're joined by Adrian via Zoom. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, very, very interested as our viewers, our audience, our listeners, our readers, to learn more about you, your story, kind of where you came from and where you're at today in what we call at Voices for Voices a brand new day of taking things that are challenges in one way or another and turning those into positives. So would you get started by maybe talking about the early part of your story and your experiences to where you were, and then we can work into where you're at today and how people can learn more about you?
Yes, absolutely. So I was born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. I grew up in what I would call a normal childhood. Both my parents together, they're still together to this day. I have an older sister. She's 3 years older than me. We had everything we needed growing up. My parents worked hard. They grew up middle class. They both, they still work. They work really hard. I noticed that I always had social anxiety from a very young age. I would say since kindergarten, since I can remember. And it was hard to talk to people. So when I grew, I was experiencing that all in elementary school, middle school, and high school. When I was 16, I was diagnosed with ADHD and anxiety, and that's when I kind of started trying out different medications from doctors, but I didn't see much improvement. I started smoking a lot of weed and drinking to kind of cope with things, and I found that when I would drink, I had the liquid courage, the confidence that I never had when I was sober, and I really liked that. So that kind of started as a weekend thing through high school. Up until my senior year, I was smoking weed every day. And then I started skipping classes, which I had never done before, getting suspended from school. One quarter in high school, I had a 1.3 GPA. I barely graduated. And then right after college or right after high school, I decided I was going to go away to college. So I went to Northern Kentucky University and lived on campus. And that's when things really started to go downhill. I never went to class. I started drinking every day to every other day, experimenting with other drugs and things like that. And I didn't feel like myself at all unless I was drinking. When I was 19, I failed out of college and decided to move back home with my parents and commute the second semester, which then I never went to class either. So then I decided, well, I'll take a gap year this year. And then I was 19 and I got my first DUI. I hit a telephone pole head on going about 40 miles an hour. I'm lucky to be alive. I almost lost my life. I broke my collarbone. I bruised some ribs. I stretched ligaments in my neck. I have permanent nerve damage in my left arm. Really, really lucky to be here today. So that did not change my outlook on drinking or anything. Actually, even drinking and driving. I lost my car and my license for a while, so I wasn't able to. So I just would get rides with friends, but I was continuing to drink every day. I got a job as a bartender at a local sports bar, and I could drink on the job for free. So I'm like, this is great.
Yeah.
So things really started to progressively get worse and worse. Then I lost that job because I was drunk on the job too much. And then I was going from job to job, serving mostly, and couldn't really hold a job for more than a few months at a time because drinking always got in the way. I was either too drunk to go in, drunk on the job, or too hungover to wake up. And then when I was 21, I found out I was pregnant with my first boy, Caden. He's 5 now. And I thought this would be like my saving grace. This was everything I needed. So I really started to turn my life around. I went to school, to nursing school. And then I was doing really well throughout the pregnancy, staying away from drugs and alcohol, and really trying to just figure out how this next chapter of my life was going to go and plan for the future. And it wasn't shortly after I had my son that I went right back to the drugs and the alcohol, because that's what I knew. And that's what made me feel safe in a way. And so when my son was, things got progressively worse still after that. So when my son was 2, so it was 2020 when COVID happened, I was a server and I lost my job. And I just got my tax money back and I'm like, I have all this money and I have nothing to do because everything is shut down. So I decided to leave my son and my family and go stay at a hotel for like 2 weeks and just party the entire 2 weeks straight. And then I only came back because I ran out of money. So when I came back home, I was embarrassed. I was full of guilt and shame. It was eating me up. And that was the first time I experienced withdrawal from alcohol. And I ended up hallucinating for 5 days straight. I had to have my mom sleep in the bed with me at, 24 years old. It was not a fun experience. So I decided I was going to go to treatment and get myself some help. And I made it about 3 weeks. And then I was like, oh, I got this. Like, I have it all figured out. I don't need treatment anymore. I'm good to go. And shortly after that, I relapsed. And that started like this ongoing about 2 year process of I would get around 30 days sober and then I would relapse because I thought I had it all figured out. I would go to treatment for 30 days. I had it all figured out and then I would relapse. And I lost count of how many times I ended up in the hospital with seizures and hallucinations and just every withdrawal symptom from alcohol you can imagine. I believe it was about 10 times in the 2 years. Um, and it was and then I did get pregnant with my second child, and he is 1.5 now. And I kind of cleaned up my act a little bit. But then as soon as he was born, I went right back to it. And then he was about 6 months old, and my parents were ready to, they're like, we can't continue to raise both of your kids. They were ready to figure out a plan they were going to keep one of my kids and my other one was going to go to my aunt. I mean, they had everything in place to carry on their life and my kid's life that had nothing to do with me in it.
Wow.
And it's hard to talk about now. That was hard. I had tried treatment in the past to get sober for my family and my son, and that didn't work. And I was finally at a place where I was so broken inside. I had no idea who I was, and I was honestly terrified to find out. Just because I was full of all this guilt and shame. And I'm like, I don't want to keep living like this. Like, I was just mentally destroyed. So I decided I was going to go to treatment, and I was supposed to go. And I ended up going out to the bar because I'm like, I want to go out one last time, just one last time. And I went home with someone who I thought was a friend I didn't know very well. And I was sexually assaulted. And I woke up, and that was the last time I drank. I woke up the next morning. I was supposed to go to treatment that morning, but I decided to go out one last time, and that's how it ended. So the next morning I woke up, I did check myself into treatment, and I made a promise to myself that I would never put myself in a situation for something like that to happen ever again. And I have kept that promise to myself to this day. I went to a place called the Mindful Healing Center in South Lebanon, Ohio, and it's a women's treatment facility. I lived there for 6 months. It was amazing. I mean, it was hard work, don't get me wrong. Yeah. I knew that was going to be the only time I would have in my life to really work on myself, to spend all this time working on myself and putting myself first. And I did that. That's exactly what I did for those 6 months. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity. And my parents agreed that they would keep my boys for, until I was done with treatment. But this was it. This was their last straw. They had enough. And I don't blame them. So when I was in treatment, I worked on, I went to treatment, and I was 26 years old, and I was having my mom do my laundry, cook for me, clean my room. I didn't know how to be an adult, let alone take care of 2 kids. So I kind of learned how to take care of myself when I was there. And then I ended up getting a little mobile home, and that's what I live in now with my boys. It's my first place of my own with my kids. And it's our home, and I love it. I did go back and do 3 more months of outpatient at the Mindful Healing Center. And when I was there, one of the things I loved about their program is I lived there, but you had the freedom of going to outside meetings and church. And I was born and raised Catholic. So I came into treatment, I thought Catholic, even though I didn't go to church much or anything. I just thought that's how I was raised. So that's what I am. Well, when I got to this treatment facility in South Lebanon, all the girls there are like, we go to this Christian church down the street. And I'm like, interesting. They're like, we attend Celebrate Recovery there. And I'm like, well, I'm Catholic, but I mean, I'll try it out. I ended up falling in love with this place. I call it my home. Those are my people. I'm there 3 days a week still. I moved 25 minutes away and I still am there all the time. I believe that's truly what saved me. I got baptized in April there. And it's just like a continued blessing every day. Shortly after I graduated treatment, I knew I wanted to work in the mental health and addiction field, but I wasn't sure what that looked like for me. I know you have to have, for most jobs, a certain amount of time clean, which I didn't even have a year yet at this point. You had to have degrees or certificates. I didn't have any of that. So I saw online that Mercy Health was hiring for it's a screening and referral specialist is what it's called. And it's through AmeriCorps. AmeriCorps partnered with Mercy Health. So it's like an 11-month, they don't like the term volunteer, they like the term service. So it's like an 11-month service position. And I'm like, this is perfect because now I have a chance to give back to the community when the community has done so much for me. They've poured my cup, they've filled me with love when I couldn't love myself. They've reached out in every way possible. And I was super excited for the chance to give even just a part of that back. So I am in the emergency department right now at a hospital in Cincinnati, and I'm there screening patients that come in that might be at risk for substance use disorder. And then if it's something they're interested in, getting them referred out to treatment from there and getting to share part of my story with them. And then I like the flexibility of the role that I have now because I also can meet with any patient that's there. I have resources for utilities, food, housing, all different kinds of stuff. So it's a really unique position, and I am networking and meeting with all different kinds of people that are in this field and all different kind of organizations. And, I'm really excited to see where the next year takes me after this term is over. It's up in August. And I'm working on my certification for my chemical dependency counseling assistance license right now and my peer recovery support license or certificate, so that when I'm done with this, I will come out with both of those and then 11 months experience in the field to see what's up next for me.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. The story, the experiences, and how descriptive you were sharing that. Thank you. Just have a few questions to maybe follow up on. Being diagnosed at a younger age, I guess how did that make you feel? Did it make you feel like, okay, I'm different than other people? That I guess how did that make you feel? Because I myself, I wasn't diagnosed at a young age, but through taking too many cold and cough pills and overdosing on that, was put on an antidepressant, did a little bit of counseling, but I was able to say, no, I don't like the way this makes me feel. I just want to do the minimum counseling therapy. So could you just relive that and just share like how that made you feel? Was it just like, okay, I got to do this, so I'm going to do it, and then there's going to be a time where it ends, and then I don't have to do this?
Yeah, it made me feel. Did make me feel different, and I kind of already felt like an outcast. So, now the fact that I am diagnosed with these things and have to take medication for it didn't help that fact at all. And I was prescribed Adderall, and I knew a little bit about it at 16, but not much. But it caused me to lose like 50 pounds. And I wouldn't say overweight, but I was, a little heavier. And then it's like I had the body that I thought I wanted, but I wasn't eating. And like looking back at pictures, I was far too skinny. And that started like this ongoing process of now like having body image issues, which I still carry with me to this day.
Yeah, that's just the correlation, just talking to you and others like us that have been through situations that being diagnosed at an earlier age can have pros and cons, but with maturity and going through social situations, I myself was I don't say socially awkward, but unless I was taking something, I felt like, oh, I can't go here unless I drink, unless I do other things, and even to this day with the medication and the therapy, when I go to places where I don't really know people, I'll just like stand off to the side. I won't like go and really talk with them. Now, if they ask me a question, I'll talk their ear off. I won't stop talking. So you kind of have like those two sides. And so my wife, it's interesting because when I met her, I was still going through some of well, not some, but the alcoholism part of my life. And so the person she met was different then than kind of now, where it's like I'm instead using my energy to try to help people, I was using my energy to pregame, to go out, to meet people, just do whatever, because I thought that's just what life was. And so when I went into the hospital for a 5-day inpatient stay and came out, she's like, who is this person? So part of her wanted that old person of when we met, but that wasn't like the healthy me. That was like, yeah, we were going out having fun and we're traveling, but it was always with that kind of supplemental alcohol and other things had to be involved to go do it. And so that's been a tough thing to kind of get through. And then even with the medication, some people need it, some people don't. One of my big stigmas or accepting that I needed help was, I don't want to have to take medication the rest of my life. If they put me on it, I automatically thought about the worst thing that could happen. It wasn't like, oh, I might be put on for a couple of years and weaned off. It was just, oh, if I start, it's never going to end. And that's been part of what's kind of kept me sober, is my accepting myself, kind of like where you got to the point you're like, all right, like I'm at rock bottom. I need to make a change for me, and I can't do anything. I can't help others, can't help my children, and really give back to others if I don't help myself. And that's just it's just so interesting. Now the treatment part, I found that was another stigma or thought of, oh my gosh, I'm going to treatment. I don't want to be one of those people that goes like, hi, my name's Justin, and these are all the things about me. But that was kind of correlating to your story of when you're able to focus 100% on yourself. There's no phones. It's literally just you living the most basic life, where they're feeding you, and if you need medication, you're going to bed a little bit early, you're getting up early, you're doing some therapeutics, maybe some art therapy, music, what have you. But I kind of look back to that time of, oh my gosh, I don't have to worry about what's going to happen in the future. And I know my phone and there's obviously the social media and all the studies about phones and addictions and how it affects the brain. But I definitely felt like once I was removed just from that, I was like, oh my gosh, I can actually think. I don't have to constantly check and see what Google thinks, see what social media thinks, how many likes did I get, or do I have, how many shares? And I went all the way back to a flip phone when I left kind of treatment, and people were like laughing, and I had to really get over two things. One is that not everybody, but many people are like, wow, like you have a you have a flip phone? I remember traveling soon after to Chicago, soon after I was released to do a speaking engagement, and I was at the top of the Sears Tower, which is now the Willis Tower, and they have kind of if you go all the way up, they have the glass where you can step out and kind of look all the way down and out. And I was like, I want to take a picture because I'm afraid of heights. And the way I got over that, if I was flying somewhere, I would drink. And so I was at a point where it's like, okay, I'm kind of doing something that's like a big fear. And so I got a couple pictures. But the funny part was when I handed my phone, it was a flip phone. He's like, where's your phone? And I was like, this is my phone. And so like looking back, the pictures are a little bit grainy. But so I had to kind of get over that of being a little bit different in that way. And then the kind of social awkwardness of joining organizations and putting myself in kind of unfamiliar social situations of being with whether it's workers or organizations, and they have happy hours and they want you to come, and if you don't, you can be stigmatized like, oh, well, Justin, he never comes to any of our external events, and part of it was the social awkwardness, and the other part is I've always gone and had a drink, and then one turns into two, and two turns into three, and so I'm going to be in a situation where I'm just being I can't even think of the word now, but it's just things are just dangling in front of me, like Justin, like the music's playing, and and people are having a drink, and what do I do? What do I drink? Do I go up and get ice water or bottled water? And so getting over that was huge, and being kind of 5 years plus removed from it. It makes things a little easier now because I don't think about it. I'm just like, okay, if I'm going here, if it's too much, then I just don't do it. So I kind of pull myself out, withdraw from it. But if I'm in a situation where, all right, I have to go, I at least have to show my face, I have to be at this thing, this luncheon, and there's going to be a bar there, that I'll just get sparkling water or regular water and just not really worry about it. And I think in my head, it was tougher to get over than actually like in practice of I'm making like this huge deal where, yeah, some people are like, what do you mean you don't drink? Just have one. Like are you driving? And it's like, no, like I don't drink. I remember being in Greece over the last summer, and after I ate dinner, they brought a complimentary shot of, I don't know if it was vodka or what it was, their local alcohol. And that was just like a custom that they just do. They're like, okay, we have your dinner, and then here's your drink. And even though I was drinking sparkling water, I was like, what do I tell them? Like, nobody will know if I just do this one shot. Like, I'm thousands of miles away. But then I knew that one would lead to two, and then it was just more trouble that it was going to lead to. So I commend you for going through as tough as it was, and it is to kind of work through, to go through things, and kind of you learn, and you're like, okay, I'm going to go try this treatment, and then a little bit later, it kind of relapse and try. And I think just with anything, when you try it enough, and then something just like clicks in your mind where I used to sleep in all the time, and so it was like now I could like get up at somewhat earlier in the morning, and I would be less cloudy thinking, and those types of things, and those are kind of some of the positive effects that come from it. But it's just remarkable, like the changes I'm sure that you've seen in yourself once you put yourself first, and just said, even though I've been told, well, Justin, you were super narcissistic then, and putting yourself first, that's kind of like very similar. But I disagree. I think putting yourself first to kind of go out and party, to skip family activities, to skip things that are kind of just us as human beings, like just things like we should do, skipping those things, to the accepting self and putting the self first that like we're talking about is just, okay, like removing certain things from our lives, putting other things healthier in it, value the time we spend with our children and the significant others and family, and if we don't have a significant other, if we're dating, just being more particular about who we meet and who we let in with the story, because like you, I mean, I'm very vulnerable when things come up. I'm very open about it, but like many things, it just puts us in a vulnerable state to just even share, like with a total stranger, and then to put, come on a podcast, and then not sure who's going to see it, and, what are they going to think about me, and I just love the place where you're at and putting yourself first. How did it make you feel once you started to put yourself first, versus how it would make you feel when you thought, the substances and alcohol was kind of the way to go? Like, okay, well, this is just how we do it. We go out, this makes me feel good, the liquid courage, versus that feeling versus now where you're at. Can you maybe compare and contrast those two for you?
Yeah, it's a good feeling. In the past, my whole identity was based around drinking and going out to the bars and going home with different men, and that was who I was, and that's all that I was.
Yeah.
And today, I have a clear head. I can think straight, and I do, I do put myself first today, and that's because I know if I don't put myself and my spirituality first, that everything else I'll lose, because I've been there before. So it does feel good, to be able to do that today.
Great. Can you touch on maybe the spirituality aspect of? Sounds like that's a big part of what's helping, and that's what I also noticed with myself, of as I was starting recovery, the therapy and the medication, and those were only doing so much. I still felt that there was something missing. I was in a loving, and still am, a loving marriage. At the time, coming out of recovery, we didn't have our daughter at that time, but now I'm able to kind of think more clearly. But that phase was just making those changes were huge for me. What were going into bringing the faith into it, where in my instance, I still felt like I was performing. Here we're like, oh, I'm performing at a high level. I'm a high performing human being. I'm goal oriented, and I want to save the world, and I'm going to do all these big things, which we do. I'm putting words in your mouth, but for me, it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to put these huge goals out here now, and put my energy towards that. But the faith aspect, I still felt like there was something missing. It wasn't until I met with my pastor and was kind of like, okay, and I was in between jobs. I just lost a job, and I was like, where the mental health could have taken another step back of like, okay, here's another hurdle. What do I do now? I have these, let's say 75% of things are kind of kicking on all cylinders, but there's still that 25% of how do I be more fulfilled, if that's a term. But when you kind of made that shift of, and myself also growing up Catholic, and then moving away from the church, and then kind of coming back into it, or kind of similarities you and I have. But yeah, like when faith started to really come in as like an option, like, oh, okay, like I'm not going to really think about it. I'm just going to do it, and I like the way it makes me feel, and I'm just going to continue to do that.
Yeah, for me, I'm like, I had tried everything else. I had been to treatment numerous times. I had been to the hospital 10 plus times, trying to detox safely. Nothing that I did worked. So I think just having something bigger than myself to believe in and put my faith in was huge. And one of the reasons that I did drink so much is because I had this massive hole in my heart. that I thought only alcohol could fill. And alcohol was my best friend until it wasn't, until it just made this hole bigger. And I've found that, you know, Jesus is the only thing that can fill that hole and that has filled that hole in my heart. Alcohol never did. As much as, you know, you want to say everything else in my life, my family and myself filled that, that's not the case for me. Jesus is what filled that for me. And it gives me a community of people who have hope and strength and who are other broken people that come together. There's just something that is so wonderful about broken people coming together and sharing their experience, strength, and hope at Celebrate Recovery, at my church, in a step study. That, you know, you come in and you're like, I'm screwed up. And they're like, you came to the right place.
Yeah, you're at the right place. Really?
Yeah, and there's nowhere else you can really do that and feel like at home doing it. Just the vulnerability that's at the church that I go to. And, you know, it took me a lot of tries. When I was trying to get sober, I was on this hunt to find the perfect church. And I was only going to Catholic churches because that's what I was born and raised as. That's what my parents were born and raised as. That's what I knew. So it took me going to treatment, and this was the only church that was nearby that I was able to go to. And I just was like, I'll try it out. And, you know, God knew that. I believe he placed me there because he knew that's what I needed.
Yeah. And I just want to share a little bit for our viewers, our listeners, our readers, that this show isn't all about faith. We're not trying to push anybody in one direction or another. I think the big takeaway is the bigger that we want to think of things bigger than ourselves, you know, go from inward to outward, and whatever somebody in a healthy manner uses, and, you know, in our situations are similar, but if somebody's watching, listening, reading about it, just thinking again, like the things that are bigger than, okay, like, and I often think, well, when I'm no longer living, like, how are people going to remember me? Are they going to remember the partying Justin? Or are they going to remember the philanthropic and the helping Justin? And even looking at very famous celebrities, when they pass away, once many years pass, people kind of forget about them. And I know that'll happen for me at some point, but I think the more good that I can do, I'll be able to have that legacy be a little bit longer than if it was just that short term. And like you, with me, it was like, okay, going to the bar, meet people, go home with them, and it was just like this. It just felt like, oh, it's just a well-oiled machine. This is just kind of like how things go, and that was even like huge for me, just going from like, okay, I'm going from a life of meeting and going home with people I never knew, ages, like I didn't know who they were, where they were, you know, what they stood for internally, to, okay, now I'm in a long-term committed marriage that I'm not saying like I don't have a choice. I mean, we all have choices, but, you know, being at the point of like, okay, like I can spend my even energy with that, of looking and meeting somebody on a dating app, or having to go to the bar, and those types of things. That's just more energy that I can use in a positive manner. And it sounds like with you as well. We're just taking that energy and that time that, I mean, I'll call it mental exhaustion, that somebody runs marathons and they get really tired and they're sweating and they can feel the aches in their joints. With mental exhaustion, it's still exhaustion. That there's still time where we might just need to take a break, and whether that's read a book or just hang out and listen to soothing music, or go to a church, go to a group where we're able to be accepted, that those are things that help fill up that space, instead of continuing to be like, oh, okay, well, I'm meeting somebody on Friday, so what about Saturday? And I'm like, okay, then what about, and it's all this time and energy, and it just feels so much just so much more, I guess, worth living, and not saying that if somebody's out there, they have a glass of wine and they're in a different situation. These are our situations that we're sharing, so not everybody is in our situations, have gone through what we are, and where we're at. So this isn't a program to tell somebody like, oh, you can't listen to your doctor if your doctor tells you that have a glass of wine, or if you have a different lifestyle. That's completely okay. We're just here sharing our experiences for those individuals that might be in a vulnerable spot where they're like, I've been through everything. I've gone through these 10 different ways. I've gone through treatment. I've gone to the hospital. I've been on medication. I don't know what's next. And it's kind of life worth living, at that point. So today, you talk a little bit about where you're at professionally, but where do you want to get to? You talk about some of the certifications that you're doing, but kind of where do you see yourself kind of growing in the next few years, professionally?
Yeah, in the next few years, I would love to either do like outreach for a treatment facility, or be a chemical dependency counselor, or do some type of case management for a treatment center. That's in the next few years. And then like down the road, I'm thinking maybe like 10 years or so. I would love to open up a nonprofit, to start a nonprofit, helping, people that are struggling with substance use disorder.
Wow, that's awesome. Anybody listening, reading, watching, we'll have some contact information for Adrian if you're in a position and looking for somebody, reach out to Adrian. That's what's in her future, what she wants to do. And I think the lived experience is one of the best experiences, if not the best. We can go to and get an education, and we can get certifications and I think those are kind of checking the boxes for an industry. But the actual coming to the table of saying, well, okay, I'm recommending things because I've been there, and here are things that like haven't worked, and they're probably not going to work for you, and here are some things that may have contributed to the positive spot that I'm in my life. So those recommendations are not just coming from a book smart individual. It's coming from somebody that has book smarts, but also has that lived experience. Like, okay, you think that I don't know how you feel in this situation? Maybe we don't know in 100% of the situations, but there's many situations where we talk where things are very similar of how they make you feel. Like, okay, how does it make you feel getting ready to go to the bar and having a few drinks, and the thought of meeting somebody new and going home with them and those things versus, okay, what comes after that? Like after that day, if that's one day a week, what about the other 6 days? What are you doing those other 6 days? Is it all the build up to that point where you're trying to pack as many things into that day? And that's what I love. Can you maybe share about the lived experience and just at like a high level of how you think that is, because it is a great quality to have for somebody who's watching, listening, reading about this podcast, of saying, I'm in that same spot. I don't have that certification. Nobody's going to take a chance on me because I'm not clean for the amount of time that I need to be. Just having that lived experience of, so maybe touch on that if you could.
Yeah, I think the lived experience is a lot. I think it goes a long way. I know from my personal experience, like I said, I work in the emergency department, and I'm really there as a volunteer. When I have a patient come in that's struggling with substance use disorder, and you have nurses and doctors that come in with degrees, doctors that went to school for this for 10 years, and they're trying to talk with a patient, and then I come in with no degree, no certificate, just come in and tell the patient like, hey, I understand what you're going through. I'm not another person coming in here telling you you have to do this and that. I've been through it. I've been sitting in the same bed that you're in right now. I know how you feel. It's like that. It builds up this like unspoken trust immediately and opens a patient up to like, wow, okay, this isn't just someone coming in telling me how I need to start living my life and what I need to stop doing. It's someone that has been there and that can relate to it. And I, you know, before I went through everything I did, I had no idea what my purpose in life was. And I'm so grateful for hitting rock bottom and hitting it as hard as I did, because I found my purpose in life through that. And now I get to share that experience, strength, and hope with others. I don't think if I would have gone through that, I would have found my purpose in life. And, being at the very bottom, like, it just makes you so grateful for all the things in life when you've been that low. So I'm really grateful for all of it.
Absolutely. So we've kind of reached the end of our time today. Is there anything we didn't cover that you want to touch on before we kind of get to the contact information? Is there any area that you want to maybe dive a little bit deeper in? We do have time for that if that's something that you'd like to do.
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to share really quickly. I know I talked a lot about church and spirituality, and that's part of my journey and what's worked for me. I work with a lot of patients who are not interested in that, and that is 100% okay. I think just trying out different things until you find what works for you will be huge in the long run.
Yeah, that's, I 1000% support that it's trying different things. Different things work for people in different ways. Some things may work for you, work for me, might not work for others, or vice versa, and works for you but not for me. And I think that's part of having that kind of clean thought process to start going through. Not that you're going through an Excel spreadsheet, but you're just going through like more healthy ways. Like, okay, well, somebody's mentioned church, and I'm 45 years old, and that just hasn't been for me. Maybe I'll go to church and just commit to maybe doing that one time, and then have that be like, okay, what's the worst that happens? I go and spend an hour, a couple hours at church, and then if that's something that I want to pursue, then you can move forward. If not, but yeah, just going through the healthier ways and instead of, okay, well, I'm going to go from substance 1 to substance 2 to drug 1 and 2 and those routes. I think that's for our audience, that's what we're really trying to get across. Find healthy ways for you that help fill, to use Adrian's term, to fill your cup so you can fill others' cup. And that just can't stress that how important that is, that we can't share when we don't have the energy. And myself gone through kind of the phase of at the kind of the lowest point for me. I lost 40 pounds. I wasn't eating. I was down to eating carrots and hummus. My body was telling me, my mind was telling me, well, Justin, you're allergic to this, you're allergic to that. And it was basically my body's way of shutting down. It was taking all those dominoes that I hadn't dealt with, all that guilt, all that shame, that ended up being 138 different things that were like, okay, I feel bad how this relationship went. I feel bad about how I treated this person, about not including this person, and all those things. It's like, oh my gosh, so all those things were inside me that I was just trying to say, okay, well, I'm gonna move on from it. And some of us can do that, but I know for myself, I wasn't able to. It really hit that point where it was just overwhelming, where the energy was sucked out. I was in bed crying. My wife was like, "Why are you crying in bed? Like, get up! You're the male. You're the husband. Like, what's going on?" And I think that's also part of you and I and the audience. They just have to figure what works for us. That even if it is a loved one very close to us, they do have our best in mind. But if they haven't gone through some of the things that we have, it's tough. And I know for me, if I haven't gone through a situation to give a recommendation, I'd probably say the same thing. Like, what's going on? Like, you don't have that bruise, you don't have that sprained ankle that I can see. It's just this, your words, and I'll use, that brokenness that we are as at that low point. And by finding whatever works in the healthiest way is what we recommend. And if faith is part of that and church is part of that, then go that route. If it's not, find something that fills that spot. So how can our audience get in touch with you or just find out more about you? If they say, wow, and you did, you have a very powerful story and experience, and I know it's going to resonate with many of our audience members. So if someone says, hey, like, how do I find out more about Adrian, or reach out to her, or just follow what she does and follow her on that journey, on that path that she's on?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Adrian Burns. It's ADrianBurns. And then my email is adrian.burns35@gmail.com. So either of those ways, I'm easily available.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming in Zoom. Because of COVID, things have been a little bit easier now with the virtual world of being able to patch people into the studio. And so a big thank you to the studio, big thank you to Adrian for joining us and really reliving some of that vulnerability, that it's not easy to talk about things, even if we're in what can be perceived or thought of as a better spot. That recovery is not something that, okay, I'm recovered from my knee surgery, I'm recovered from my sprained ankle. The recovery is a day-to-day process that we just have more tools in that tool belt today than we had at a different point. So yeah, just a big thank you for joining us, and we'll include your contact information in our show notes. And we wish you, from Voices for Voices, from me, from everybody, the best of luck, and not that it's going to take luck to continue on, but the best of luck in your journey, wherever that takes you, whatever other new doors that you find. Maybe some doors close, other doors open, but I know that your story it's an inspiration to me. And it's inspiration to the audience to be able to be vulnerable and to share not only the lows, but kind of those higher points of, yeah, you can get through it. It might not seem as, like for me, it might not seem as glamorous as maybe some other ways that maybe the party lifestyle might show, but you're going to feel a lot better inside, and you have more of that emotional side tied to what you're doing, versus just like, okay, I need to just work for that paycheck to go out and party and to do those things. Like, okay, I need to do that, but then I'm a human being, so I have emotions, and I think that's huge. So yeah, thanks again for joining us, Adrian, and we'll be watching for your next steps in the future.
Thank you so much for having me, Justin.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Take care. Do you or someone know or shop at Amazon.com? If so, please consider choosing Voices for Voices for your charity of choice through the Amazon Smile program. We have the easy-to-follow instructions at voicesforvoices.org/Amazon-smile. There are 0 fees, and it is 100% free to do. We want to thank you, as we do at the end of every episode, for joining us on the Voices for Voices podcast. And a humongous, super special thank you to our guest today, Adrian Burns, not only for joining us, but going through the low points and the high points, and how what she's doing today is truly making a difference in the lives of others. So we want to again thank her for her time, and we wish her the best of luck in everything she does in the future, from Voices for Voices, our board, everybody that's associated with us, our sponsors. So until next time, I am Justin Allen Hayes, founder and executive director of Voices for Voices, host and humanitarian. We hope you have a great day, and please, like Adrian, be a voice for yourself or somebody else in need.